No,
Oh,
no. Yeah.
Hi, yes, Praveen here.
Good to see you,
hey
Pragam.
Praveen.
Hi, sir. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Doing really nice. Good to see these talks happening. I mean,
Good.
I look forward to them every Saturday now.
Yeah, even I'm looking forward to every Saturday. It's
Yeah.
good to see Pragam again, and
Yes.
I formally welcome you to the DES698 Design Talk Series. Won't take much of a time,
Hmm.
so you can get started. We have students from the design program, first year and second year master students, and also we have students from the VLM program. And of course, there are a lot of alumni who are joining in, which is good.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
let's start program. And
yeah. Sure. Thanks, sir, for inviting me, and thanks, MJ, for. I don't know if everyone knows you by that name, but I definitely do. uh, yeah, I'm a little bit handicapped.
MJ is known as MJ.
He
Yeah,
is known as
MJ.
MJ. Yeah, DMJ. Nice. I have a bit of a handicap with Zoom, so if it goes, yeah, not correct in between, just let me know. I'm not used to using Zoom even now, so you can see my screen, right,
Yeah, yeah.
everyone?
Visible.
Okay, and just my presentation and not the whole desktop.
No,
No,
just the
you're
Okay.
just the presentation. I think still not in full screen mode.
yeah.
Waiting for
Now it's
that.
in the full
Not.
screen.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice. So yeah, so I have this talk because, of course, as I said, I was asked by MJ and also one of my batchmates, Siddharth. I don't know if a lot of you know him or not. I think he was also he had given all a talk already, I think. And yeah, I was asked just to come here and share my experiences with you guys. But MJ then also asked me to give a talk title, and I was in a soup because I was not thinking of a title right away. So yeah, so then I went back a little bit, thought about it, and then came up with this. Uh, and why randomness is because I'm going to talk about random things, so you should learn to embrace it. No, I'm just kidding. You'll know why this talk is titled randomness. So who am I? I'm Pragam. I'm working at ING right now as a senior UX designer. What is ING? If you don't know, maybe you remember some time back we used to have in India ING Vesa Bank. I still don't know how to pronounce it. So it's a bank. Basically, it's a Dutch bank based out of Amsterdam. So I'm living in Amsterdam right now. And yeah, it right now does not have any existence in India. So maybe it's a name you have not heard before, even it was new for me. But I'll come to that later on. What I do beyond work, I have a 2-year-old, so a lot of my time goes into looking after him. And I play cricket. That's also something which has revived recently quite a bit. So I'm really enjoying that. And photography, which is slowly going down, but yeah, still exists. At least with the new smartphones, it has become much easier. So that's a little bit about me and what I do. And let's start with why am I here in the first place? Of course, I was in IIT Kanpur, as probably most of you in the call. I was in the 9/11 batch. It's 9/11 has got a bad name now, but yeah, that's how it was when we joined. And yeah, before that, I have not put that in this timeline because yeah, I wanted to just focus on design. But before that, I did my graduation in mechanical engineering from Triple IT Jabalpur, and that's actually where the whole seed of knowing design and what design is actually formed. And from there on, I moved to Noida to join Samsung Design Lab. From there, I moved to South Korea for a year within Samsung again, and then I left the job and I started consulting, staying back in Noida, and then I moved here, and I'm here well, as of now, I'm here as well. So that's in short what I've been up to in the last 8-9 years approximately. And what you see in between these random scribbles is what I define as the turning points in my timeline for now, and that's where I kind of learn to be embrace randomness. But you'll learn a bit more about it once we move ahead in the presentation. And of course, apart from work, you also experience changes in your life, and that's the latest dot on my timeline. That's where my son was born, and it changes your life. So it's also something I want to talk about a little bit, but maybe not so interesting for students, but just giving you what lies ahead in future for you. So let's start. This will be I'll be following a format here, so I'll be going through the whole journey, what I learned along the way. I'll be showing some examples. Of course, the examples are not really that detailed because I cannot really share a lot of work, but you will get an idea of how things worked in these places where I was. And apart from this presentation, if you have any question, then feel free to reach out to me. I can always walk you through some of the things I've been doing, and if you have any questions, is there a hand raise functionality in here? Like if I ask you guys something, is there a way to interact on Zoom?
Yes, you can raise your hand. So there is a functionality where you can raise your hand as a participant.
Okay.
And you can see it on your screen, I think.
It's weird because if I'm on full screen, I don't see my cursor. So I'm just okay. I see it. Okay, but I just wanted to see if there's a way I can interact with you guys.
So, Mrityunjay, in case he has if people have questions,
yes, sir,
just pick up those strings and interrupt in between, if that is okay with Pragam.
Yeah, that's perfectly okay. I think that's something I miss actually in these talks, because I have no clue what's happening behind the slides. So it will be really nice if somebody has some comment or question, just interrupt. Don't wait for typing it later on. Yeah, is that okay?
Yep.
Okay, nice.
And also there is, if you'll click on that participants tab below that participant thing, you can see raise hand button below. So that will appear on the screen. So that will notify that somebody wants to ask a question.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll see. Is that Lokesh? Hi, Lokesh. Oh, he just absconded. Oh, he was my batchmate. Sorry. So I'll start with IIT Kanpur, of course, and I'll start with my learnings, and some of these learnings, and of course these are personal, so I'm not going to generalize them and say, okay, this is how you should be, or this is how this is your learnings as well. This is not the case. This is something very personal, and I think if you relate to it, good. If you don't, just see if you can also learn something from it. Oops. Yeah. Well, it's really fundamental. A lot of you might already be doing it, but this is something I really understood later on when I moved to industry. Is something which you really should do in these 2 years, and 2 years is not a long time, by the way. If you have not done design before, say in your graduation, under graduation, 2 years just fly by, and then you're suddenly inside a company, and you're figuring out things yourself quite a bit. Of course, you learn a lot from the institute, but as I said, no matter where you study, because I've worked with students from all over the globe, almost, and you cannot expect to learn everything in 2 years in design, especially. And then, of course, you keep on learning. But what you can actually do is get your foundations right, get your basics in place. Whatever your area of interest is, make sure that in that particular domain you have good enough knowledge that once you go to industry, you are kind of confident in what you did in 2 years. So that was one of my learnings, at least. Stick to process. Again, this is something which I kind of tried to do within the 2 years I had. and I still am trying to follow the mantra, if you can call it. Sometimes we are too focused on what our outcomes are of the designs which we are doing, whether it's industrial design or interaction design or graphic design, whatever. But the process will stay with you as long as you are staying in design. And that's also the time when you have no business constraints, no really any kind of a pressure. That's you can really fine tune how you as a designer should be and how your process will be when you move ahead in life beyond this institute. Of course, it will change. It won't stay the same. But as I said, with basics, this is also part of your fundamentals, which you can attain from these 2 years. And lastly, I'm not sure. I've been guilty of not being in touch with the institute for last few years. So sorry, sir, for that. But I'm not sure how the status is right now. And beyond this talk, I'm also really curious to really know what kind of.
I totally agree with the third point. Yes,
Yeah.
because the nature of the program is such that there are a lot of projects, especially part of the coursework, where students do as group projects, but it's always important to constantly work on personal design projects as well. That really helps a lot.
Yeah, and that is something I see even in really experienced professionals. So just to give you some background, I was involved in mentoring at some local UX groups here in Amsterdam, and again, I don't have exposure to what designers in France or what designers in Brazil they study. But when I was reviewing their portfolios, I could see something really like lacking there, and that was actually you as designer. You are always observing and experiencing things, and no one stops you from really applying your mind and applying your process to just keep on generating projects, and that really helps one, building your portfolio, of course, but also really helping you to learn your skills and hone your skills better. So apart from your coursework, apart from, of course, the projects and workshops which you get to do, just find time to do personal projects. And I think now, especially, the tools are so easy to use, and there's so much content online to kind of absorb and use. I think it should be really be something which you should be doing in your free time. So, and that's something I didn't do, by the way. So it's not that I did a lot of personal projects, but again, it's a learning. What should I have done in hindsight now? If I think about it, I think it's something really important. So yeah, as I said, I think I'm not really sure how much of this is being done in last few years at IIT Kanpur, but if you're doing it, it's great. If not, I think it's never too late. So just pick it up. And again, feel free to reach out to me if you have any ideas, and I can also help you guys with how we can approach this. So so that was in summary what I did in 2 years. Of course, I did a lot more, but for now, I won't bore you with my IIT Kanpur stuff, because maybe the stuff coming up is little bit more interesting. But in short, I did a lot of exploration, and I learned to enjoy design, and I think that's most important. Of course, if you have made up till here, you have some sort of passion, and that's my son crying. So I'm learning to embrace randomness. But yeah, so love design. Try to enjoy design, because again, once you enter into industries, you don't always get that feeling that you are doing something you love. But these 2 years are really your own, and just make them your own. So don't worry too much about grades, and I mean, sorry sir, but do worry about grades, but yeah, just enjoy.
No, don't worry about grades. That's okay. Absolutely fine.
Okay, don't worry. Okay, then what happened? So I was in IT, and then I graduated, and the randomness strikes, because I did not sit for the campus placement. I was too stuck with following kind of a design research role, which was not really that common back then. I'm not sure if it's even common now in India. but yeah, so with that, I was kind of mostly sitting at home or trying to get some freelance gigs, but it was not easy. And yeah, if you graduate from IIT and if you're not having a job for a few months, it's doesn't go well with your families and with your neighbors, etc. So yeah, so that was a bit of a struggle, I would say. Well, not that I could not have got a job, but I was too fixated on one thing which I wanted to do. And in between, I was also thinking of PhD. But I think in hindsight now, it's a good choice I didn't make. Again, doing a PhD is a good choice, but it was probably not for me at that moment. So I kind of skipped that. But then finally, I got a design research job. It was partially luck, and it was partially probably also a bit of a persistence from my side. But yeah, so I landed in Samsung. It was a unique team, I would say. It was the Asia Design Lab, which Samsung in Korea has set up, and they were responsible for making contextual and innovations for the Indian subcontinent. And that was a really interesting place to be in, because then you were responsible as a team, of course, to really think of local needs and really apply those needs and transfer those insights to teams which are sitting in Japan or in Korea. So it was for me an ideal start on really what I wanted to do. But then, of course, I was new to it and I was learning. And then I'll share some of my learnings. These are mostly research based. So those of you who are interested in research or design research, maybe you might find this useful. But of course, there's a lot. Again, I can share if you guys want to, but for now I'll keep it short. So insights are not observations, and that's something I found really kind of interesting, that still in industry when we see a lot of research reports and usability reports and all those things, they mostly end with observations. A lot of the time, I think it's also the lack of time which a lot of these projects have, but insights really come from looking beyond what you are actually seeing and observing. And it takes time. It's not something you can do in a couple of hours. You need to really spend time and sometimes also be creative. It does not have to be really obvious that what you're seeing is you have to sometimes think beyond what's obvious. So I'll give you an example. So this was a project where we had to go around the country and really look into how people use microwave ovens and how they cook using microwave ovens. This was actually my first project in Samsung. It still probably is the most interesting project I did. And it was amazing. Like I went to the southern part of India, to Calcutta, to north, of course, and to, I think, Mumbai as well. And we could see a lot of stuff happening. But then maybe I can just pose a quick question to this. So what do you get from this image? What do you observe when you look at this image? Any answers? You can put in chat, or you can just
woman seeing inside microwave.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, checking if the food is cooked. That's correct.
She has to, she has to look down to get to check the food.
Yeah, that's a good one.
She has to bend her, kamar to have a look.
Yeah.
The visibility of the food is not aligned with the eyesight.
Yes.
I mean, she has opened the door whether the food is cooked or not. Actually, she can look from without opening the door, I think.
Yeah, I think that's actually one of the ideas we came up with, because in these doors you actually cannot see that well. But you are right. That's a possibility, correct? So, okay, I think all of you kind of get the gist, and these are all valid observations. In fact, there could be even more, even if you like. Okay, I'm trying to close this chat. Okay, it's fine. So you can also go beyond the microwave here and look at the kitchen, look at the environment, right? And all these things probably you might have also learned already in your course groups, but and again, each of these observations can lead to really interesting design options. But when you go a level deep, then you actually get the insights, and the insights were not really about how the microwave is or how the product works in this environment, but it was more about cooking. And that's where we kind of found the essence of, okay, what Indian cooking is and how is it different from any Western cooking. And mostly of these products were made from a Western cooking perspective. So having to smell, having to see, and having to get that visual response is something which kind of became the core insight which we got from it, and it kind of drove the whole product development beyond after this. So all of you were correct. I think these observations were perfectly in line, but sometimes observations can kind of miss the underlying insight, basically, and that's where you probably need to put a bit more effort to figure out what's really happening beyond this. And this is not the only picture from where you'll get this insight. You have to really lay down all these pictures which you get, or all these observations which you get from different places, and that's how an insight is built. So my learning is that take the extra step and don't just stop at observations. Put that extra effort to get the insight which is behind these observations. Okay. And of course, as a researcher, if you're planning to do design research in future, don't just stop at insights. You are designer first and design researcher after that. So all of your research should end with something tangible. It can't just be, hey, I got these 5 insights, now my job is done. This was an example of research at Samsung we did. We went to Middle East, and we had a kind of a task at hand to figure out what Samsung can do in the space of chronic disease management, and this was specifically targeting at diabetes because it's really high in the Middle East area. So we did the whole research. It was a massive research with couple of agencies from Middle East, and what we ended up with is 4 service design ideas. So by the way, this is the website of Samsung Design, and this is the only public thing I could share, but you are free to go there and check out for yourself. They have some really interesting design case studies, and one of them is this as well. So basically you really again have to go into that phase of ideation, and as a researcher you cannot just say, hey, I've got these nice insights and my job is done. So it's just part of the process, and the real end goal is still making solutions or products or interfaces or whatever you're working on. MJ, just give me a track of time, because I don't know how. Okay, probably I should speed up a little bit. And yeah, the last thing I learned was research work can be a bit boring, and well, those who have experienced it or are interested, probably, of course, they won't agree with it, but that was the impression I got from my colleagues when I started working, that I should just be sketching, and what's the point of doing research. But what I also learned is that you can make the process of research more creative, and that's something which entices more stakeholders to join you. So an example is again, as one of the projects we had was to create some contextual features for laptops. Samsung was kind of lagging behind in laptops in India, at least at that time. So we had to do research, and of course you can go and talk and do focus groups and all those, but we were really looking forward to a way to kind of engage people, and this was something we came up with. Again, it's not something in textbooks. We really have to try and see what works and what doesn't. But this actually involved a day of brainstorming, that okay, how can we do this better? And it was actually like a design brainstorm where we were trying to come up with a good research method to try and engage. So we came up with this idea of create your own laptop, where we invited a group of young students in their mid-teens, and we asked them to okay, we have this props for you, go forward and design your own laptop and then pitch your laptop to everyone else, and the best laptop will win. So it was really an engaging way to kind of you can call it a co-creation, but we thought it's a good way to do research. But it was interesting, and the whole process becomes really fun and engaging for everyone involved in the project. So what I learned in Samsung, apart from all these things I told you, is the value of communication. And again, that's something which you kind of evolve and learn as you move forward. But for me, that was the biggest takeaway, that doing good work is not enough, but how you communicate it, how you package it, how you put forward, and how you then convince your stakeholders is a big part of your growth as a designer. But then randomness strikes back again. I get a call from my manager that, hey, are you interested in moving to South Korea? I'm like, okay, when? It's like, you have 1 day to make a decision. I'm like, okay. I was out with my wife. I think we were watching a movie or something when I got this call. And then within a month, we have to prepare the move. So I said yes, but it was a big chaotic moment in our life that, okay, how do we do this? What happens to her job? And what happens to our house which we're renting? So it was a kind of a really nervous moment for us, but we just went with the flow and we said, okay, let's see how it goes. Then we landed in Seoul. It was still within Samsung, but it was a different team, and I was part of this UX innovation group working on really confidential projects. And I literally saw people moving around in like briefcases, as you would see in movies, and it had like future phone samples and all of that. It was a totally new world for me, to be honest, and I was a little bit like awestruck by looking at the amount of designers. They were like, I think over 1,000 designers in that office. So I have never seen so many designers under one roof. So it was a little bit I was awestruck by that. But anyways, it was a totally different way of work from where I was. And then I was learning to let go. I was this design researcher who always wanted to do it in the right way, right process. But when I went there, it was a totally different way of working. And they were like, hey, we need something in 2 weeks. And I'm in Korea. I don't know the language. I can't really go out and talk to people on the streets. It's not possible. So I had to really change my approach and my way of work. And then I also learned that, okay, you can design with little or no research. It's not something which you need to do always before doing something. And one of the example I can share right now is we were working on so Samsung used to have this S voice. This was the kind of the Siri of Samsung, their own voice platform, and we had to come up with some improvements for it. Is anyone having a question, or did I just hear something? Okay, never mind. So we had to come up with a lot of interesting improvements to that. So we came up with a framework. We were put in a small team, and we just had to ideate, and it was really new to me because I had no context of S voice. I am not a Samsung user, and I just had to come up with ideas. It was nice. I think this is also something which a lot of designers and even I will today dream of. We don't get to get these kind of projects, but it was difficult for me at that time. But yeah, we did manage to do something really nice with it. And then I also learned research is not always talking to people, and there was so much research out there to really use it in a smart way. So you have a day, how will you figure out what's happening with voice technologies, for example? And if you're new to it, and this go around, look in these social platforms, there are so many experts who are around. So again, as I said, it's you need to look beyond what you already know and what you can do, but also again think of creative ways to get information. And any information is better than no information. And this also something I really follow right now is some research, bad research is better than no research. So don't really worry about doing it in the perfect way. And last thing, which probably was my biggest learning, was the amount of IP we could generate from design ideas. And again, I think it depends also on the company where you work and where you what kind of industry you are in. But of course, in Samsung, it was a big deal. And yeah, that was something which was really new for me. So we had all these design concepts, and we were generating quite a bit of patents from it. So I think I ended up having like 3 or 4 US patents in like a span of 3-4 months. And I was amazed, like, okay, this was something which was totally new for me. So I think, again, if you guys are in IT and if you have some interesting ideas, don't just stop at thinking, oh, it's just a concept and it's not having that much value. At least if it's not going to market, and if it's not really materializing into something tangible, always think of if there's any IP you can generate from that. It's something we really miss as designers, I've observed in industries. So yeah, what was my learning? And as I said, it was all about adaptation. It was about adapting to new way of work. It was adapting to new cultures. And of course, the culture was totally different. And that's something which kind of is always stayed with me. So I'm still someone who likes to move on quickly with work. And that sometimes contradict with how things happen here in, for example, Europe. They don't really work the same way as people in Korea do. But yeah, but that's something I learned, and the importance of speed, I could say. Yeah, then I came back. It was a 1-year assignment for me. I came back from Korea. I left Samsung. Why? Yeah, I have my reasons for it, but maybe if you're interested, you can ask me later on. But I had no idea what's next. So it was kind of going back in time, like when I left IT, then I like, okay, what should I do now? Thankfully, my wife had a good job, and by the way, she's also from IT, so she's also a designer, and she is probably a bit less of a risk taker, I would say. So I was like, okay, as long as you are getting enough money in the house, I can be a bit more experimental. But then, of course, yeah, you won't sit idle for long. And then I started my own consulting. Well, freelancing, but I think consulting sounds more fancy. And then, of course, it was a totally different ball game from this big organization, having to work with huge design teams with multiple level of design bosses above you. I was totally on my own. Luckily, I got a good project to start with, but yeah, for me, I think the biggest learning was to have faith in your designs and decisions. And there's a thin line between being egoistic and being really stuck to your design versus having enough confidence to kind of say, okay, this is something I think is correct, and maybe let's validate, or maybe let's test if this is indeed the case. But if you're consulting, and if you're thinking of consulting in future, that's something you should really keep with you. You cannot be double-minded about what you're thinking is right or wrong. And also you cannot be too egoistic about the way you work or the designs you produce. Just an example. So where did I learn, actually, where did this get this kind of moment of truth is there was a project I was working with a design consultancy in Noida, kind of consulting for a consultancy, by the way. And they have this huge project. It was Tata was launching at that time Tata Click. I don't know if you guys have heard about it. I don't think it's that popular now. I don't know. But they were launching this new platform. It was and they were looking forward to the designs of the app and web. And then it was something similar to what I did in Korea. So it was, hey, we need to design this app for this new e-commerce platform. I was like, okay. And what do we know about it? Like, okay, we just have 5 slides from Tata, and then this is what we need to do in a week. And then you again go into that mode of, okay, let's see what we can do. How can we differentiate? They're like already 5 or 6 big players. And you come up with some designs, of course, right or wrong, you don't know, or how far they will go. But then you are sitting in this meeting with stakeholders, with big executives and directors from Tata, and then you have to explain your designs, and then you cannot be saying ifs and buts and I don't know if this will work or not. So it really needs to be in that balance that you know what you're doing. So yeah, so that was something I really experienced for the first time, that okay, I really need to own my designs. ask the right questions, don't challenge. Startup owners, they love their products. They are kind of, yeah, they call them their babies. And if you go and tell someone, hey, your baby is ugly or or not behaving well, you know what will happen. So right, so it's their baby, and you cannot just go and as a designer call, hey, you know what, all the work you have done in the last couple of years is crap. Now I will tell you how you should do it. This will never work. uh, so I think you need to be again really balanced there. You need to appreciate what the amount of effort which others put in a startup, and this is specifically I'm again talking about you as a single designer consulting with a startup, for example. So this was a startup in Gurgaon where they were making a huge platform for managing diabetes, and it was really complex. And again, the first thing I asked them, hey, have you ever spoken to a person with diabetes? And they said no. I'm like, so have you have made this whole plethora of features and platforms for the last 2 years, and you've never spoken to a person who has diabetes? And that's where I kind of was slowly helping them realize that this is something they should be doing, and just questioning them in the right way, challenging them in the right moments. And that's how slowly within months I could change their way of work. But day one I couldn't do it because yeah, they're hiring me, they're giving me money, and they have a task for me. I cannot just go and say yeah, bad things about their way of work or whatever. By the way, this is an interesting book. If you see in the right hand corner, Articulating Design Decisions, if you have not read it, it's a must read, I would say. And it's something I read at least once a year. Yeah, it really helps you as a designer understand how you should be dealing with stakeholders. It's really important book, at least I think it's really interesting book for all designers. And last thing, be honest in your work. Money will follow. Well, yeah, of course, money is important. But I think once you start consulting, you cannot be thinking a lot about it. It can be really be enticing because you as a freelancer are quoting your rates per hour and things like that, and you can really go over the top and really set your own benchmark in that sense. But once you invest a little bit time in making relationship, in really proving how good or valuable you can be, money will come. So that's not a concern, and never have that concern. There might be few months where you think, hey, this is probably not going that well financially, but trust me, if you give enough time to set up your brand, then money will be there on your table. So just an example of how I was doing it. Well, again, not from a money perspective, but basically I was hired as a UX designer. I was supposed to make screens, deliver screens, and that's it. But I was kind of going a little bit beyond what my contract asked me for. I was trying to inspire the team that, okay, let's do things a bit differently. Google Design Sprint came up. I think that was quite new at that time. It was 5 years back. And I thought this could be really interesting method to apply in any startup. And yeah, these kind of things I was constantly trying to push the founders that, okay, let's try this out. We can validate some new features real quick. And they were really impressed with this, and they did try it out. So yeah, so I think over time they kind of developed a relationship, and that really helped me negotiate later on, by the way. So yeah, so it was fun. But then what I learned is really owning the designs.
Pragam.
Yeah.
So I just have a small request. Can you,
Yeah.
because these are all first year design students, most of them,
Mm-hmm.
and also there are VLM students who are also not much exposed to design at this point of time.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can explain the Google Sprint, um,
Yeah.
the process, that would really be helpful for them.
Okay, so I think Google has a branch called Google Ventures, where they help startups basically with design and with validating ideas. Uh, if you have not heard about it, again, I think it's Google, so just Google it. You will find a plenty of things to learn. But Google Design Sprint is basically a way or a method where you can break down a problem, and their goal is within 5 days you can have a validated solution to a problem in a nutshell, if you see it. And then they have their own method, and it's really refined. They also have a book called Google Design Sprint where they really explain everything in detail. I think if you don't have it, you should have it, but it's also a really interesting way to for you guys to really do your projects. So basically it goes through a cycle which most of us knows. It's not new for designers, but it was really new, I think, for a lot of startups where they usually jump on solutions the first day or right when they form their startups. They start with solutions and not with problems, and that's where they kind of introduce. So they have like 5 days of like in a workshop format. You always start with understanding users. That's your day one. And they have their own rules. So I'll probably not be able to deep dive into all the rules right now, but each day has their own set format, their own templates. So first day is dedicated to understanding users. The day two is basically ideation, and there are a lot of rules on how you ideate in there. The third step is choosing the ideas. A lot of brainstorming techniques are also kind of given in their description. And then you prototype something. Again, the prototype can be just a bare paper model, or it can also be really high fidelity screens if you are making some interfaces. And the last step is validate. And validation is just go to your users, go on streets, wherever you can find people, and just talk. So what happens is, instead of thinking in a room filled with people brainstorming, putting on your own assumptions on the table, you have a process where in 5 days you can have really, well, not really detailed designs, but nice validated ideas which you can pick and then really deep dive and kind of refine and define them better. So but I think if you want to know more about design sprint, just Google it and you'll find plenty of information on it. So is that okay for now?
Yes, perfectly fine. Okay,
thanks. So I think for me the biggest learning was owning design ownership. You are the only one who knows as a consultant, and then you really need to own what you're delivering. And then again, randomness strikes back. One of my ex-colleagues, he was with me in Samsung in Seoul. He moved to Amsterdam, and then he approached to me, hey, are you interested in moving to Amsterdam? And then, of course, when you think of Amsterdam, you think of, not really work, I would say. So I was like, why? I was totally enjoying my consulting, by the way. I was getting good work. I was making good money, but this totally came out of blue. And then where would I go? It's a bank. I had no clue what ING was at that time. My parents asked me, what will you do in a bank? And I think the image of a bank is that you're sitting in a counter and counting currency notes. So even I had no clue what designer will do in a bank, but I think it was really different when I came here. And for how long? I don't know. I am still asked this question every second day from my parents. Are you coming back? I'm like, I have no idea. But let's see. So again, it's a big random kind of a situation which came in again. But then here I am for last almost 4 years, I think now. Yeah. And what I have learned here, and it's a totally different way of work. It's a totally different culture again. And I'm part of product teams here, which are kind of, again, it's a bank. It's bank and a technology company, if you can kind of put it in a better way. But what I've been learning here is that design can really influence the product vision. And when I say that, I don't know if it makes sense to a lot of you, but in a lot of places, design is still doing a lot of superficial work. And by superficial, I don't mean it's demeaning. I think it's also important that how your product looks and feels. It's the core of design, I would say. But they're not really part of product strategy or unless you are at a really high level, unless you are a chief design officer or a product designer. At my level, people don't really get to say that much into how a product should evolve. And that's something I'm kind of experiencing here that can happen. So an example here is that ING in Belgium, they have launched a partnership with a third party, which means on a bank. So you are a bank customer, you have an application for that bank, but you can actually have a third party, which means bank itself is not giving you functionalities, it's asking someone else to build that, and then you have that access from your bank. I don't know if it makes sense, but basically it's something which is really new for banks, given that it's your data. It's really how do you handle the data? How do you make sure people trust that you are giving your data to somebody else, and those kind of things. But it's still something which was very design driven, and it's something I really learned, that you don't have to wait for the technology people to really come to you and say, okay, this is what we need, but you can really drive the conversations around how this whole thing should evolve. Again, coming back to stakeholders, I think this is something which is really important if you move forward in design, is how do you deal with them? And here, since again it's a big organization, there are a lot of stakeholders. What I learned is to involve stakeholders early in the process, so make them contributors and not reviewers of your work. One tool I can probably explain to you is the service blueprint. I don't know if you've heard about it, but it's a really interesting way in which you can see how a product or how a design impacts different functions in a company. So if you make a concept, go out to the engineers, you go out to, in our case, so we are a bank and we have a huge risk and legal and compliance team. I think in Europe, they are really finicky about their privacy and how much risk does it pose, et cetera, et cetera. So we really need to be on top of all of that. But it's also a problem because then, yeah, you as designer, you don't always know all of these things, right? So you always need to be in touch with these different streams, bring them in a room, show them the designs, ask them to give comments, and it's as simple as that. So it's really not waiting and cribbing later on that, hey, nothing happens here in design because people don't understand design, etc. But I think the effort has to be made to also make them part of what you're doing. So you cannot be in a bubble, sitting in your corner and saying, hey, I'm the most creative, most logical person in this building. But I think it's somewhere we also need to break that wall, which we make ourselves sometimes in a company, or at least that's what I have observed with a lot of designers. So yeah, it's an interesting tool. And again, I'm referring back to this book, Articulating Design Decisions. It explains this really well, and how you can break that wall basically between designers and non-designers in a company. And last part is I'm learning to really play with data here, and but I'm still sticking to my research roots. And I've come to this conclusion that you use data basically, and data is something, for example, if I have an app, a banking app, how many customers log in, how many customers go to a particular section, where do customers kind of drop out, if there is a flow, these kind of things. And then you kind of constantly optimize it. But then you also need to keep on digging for some inspiration, because the optimizations are never ending. You can just keep on doing forever, but then you somewhere need to break the mold and say, okay, is this the best experience we are providing? And then you need stories, and that's where research comes back again. So data is good for iterations, and stories you really need to kind of inspire team and say, okay, 6 months from now, how does this product look like? And data will not help there. You really need some human touch and say, okay, this is what we hear from customers. They are struggling to buy a new house. Let's see how we can help them as a bank, for example. And those kind of stories really motivate teams to think beyond what is already there. So again, something for you guys to maybe check and look into is the whole concept of agile and how agile works. And this is something which is very common in product organizations nowadays. But again, as a UXer, how do you fit in? So agile is basically it's kind of a way of development, especially software development, where in a span of 2 weeks, you need to make sure that there is a feature going out to the customer. So you're not just sitting there on development for months, but every few weeks or few days you need to ship something. That's the technical terminology. But again, how does UX fit in? Because if you think of 2 weeks, it's too short a time to provide a concept. But then read this book. It's called Lean UX. Again, if you're going in UX, if you want to follow UX in future, then this is something which will also help you understand how in a agile setup you can really fit your process and how does that work. So yeah, and what I'm learning right now, and this is something which is also work in progress for me, is really the business of design. So it's for me, at least now, it's going beyond just making screens, but really working on setting up the right vision, setting up the roadmaps, and of course making screens by end of the day. But it's kind of really learning how design can impact business, and that's where I'm kind of swimming right now in this company. So if you look back, I think there were 4 or 5 key things which I've learned over my different periods of randomness, I would say. And each time when I had a kind of a decision to make, I ended up learning something. So I started with exploration. It was IIT Kanpur, and then I was learning the importance of communication. Then adapting to new cultures, that was something I learned. And if I've never been to Korea, I would have probably skipped that. I was in a nice bubble in my office in Noida. And then I skipped the bubble of being in a corporate, and then I learned the value of owning your designs and ownership. And now I'm kind of still learning the art of design and business in a way. And of course, the last part, which I'm not talking about right now in this presentation, is the importance of work life. Because once you have a child, you also need to really focus on your family and stuff. So it's also, for me as a designer, it's also learning, because you cannot just be thinking about work and design all the time. So that's also a work in progress, I think. And what's looking ahead? Let's see. I still don't have the next moment of randomness thought of, but you never know. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Pragam. It was nice to, I would say, get some insights from you on your observations from your life so far. And it was nice to see the kind of projects that you're doing, and a couple of interesting things that you've talked about to the students. So, I mean, the classes this semester started only in September. So it's just design students are about a month old here. And all these things are going to be extremely useful for them. Even, the kind of references that you were giving of the books, Mrityunjay has already sent those, I can see, on the chat box.
I'm also uploading the book. I have a PDF. So
yes, that will be nice. So these things actually, this, I'm actually very happy with this practice which has started. With at least, every week we have something to give to the students.
Yeah.
That's really nice. So it's open for questions now. If students want to ask any questions, please go ahead.
Yeah, I can imagine now this might have been a little bit too technical at places, but yeah, I mean, I'll probably share this slide as well with you guys, but if you look back and look at these book references or read about it a little bit more, maybe by next year you will again find it a bit more useful once you are really into the rhythm of doing things.
That's perfectly fine, Pragam. Actually, see, one of the reasons why I wanted this whole thing to start, and after discussing with Mrityunjay and Siddharth, was also that for the last couple of years, when the students were coming in, there was this whole concern that, and especially those who, like you, who moved from engineering streams into design, or did not have a very clear idea about what design is. One genuine question comes in is, where do I go after completing the program here? And more and more they listen to all of you and your own experience. They would also have some idea. They would at least be able to see where 5 years down the line where they stand.
Yeah.
So that is also very important actually for them.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's true.
So
there is one question being asked by Nikhilesh Tripathi. Do designers get 2 days weekend like software people?
Yeah, I think we get like probably 4 days weekend if you ask me. Designers are the most, how to say that? What's the word for ladla? Yeah, they are the most preferred child in an organization. I would tell you. So from a perspective of skipping the company rituals, and as a designer, if you go in a big organization, you are in a good place. Let me tell you that. So I think get a lot of perks and freedoms because you come with this creative. Oh, he's a creative person. Don't disturb him.
They're considered like creative people, थोड़ा सा पगले type के होते हैं, so you don't really get them engaged into too many,
Sir, I am interrupting in between Siddharth here. So,
yes.
so I think it totally depends upon person to person also. And I think I think the students who are asking these questions are people who have not been to the campus still. So Satyakesa, you need to make them work Saturday and Sunday, and then they will realize there is no value of weekend. So as designers, please learn how to have night outs and how not to sleep.
There was a complaint against me for making a 40 hours course into a 200 hours course.
I don't know.
Before that, maybe before that.
Yeah.
But okay, this is interesting because post-COVID things might change. So this was the weekend, the idea of weekend, everything was for a brick and mortar kind of a setup. But I can even also see here where people really value their weekends. Like it's a crime if you ping someone on a weekend. I've at least received 2 WhatsApp messages in last 1 month on a weekend. So I think things might change if this situation stay like this.
No, it's actually a good practice to have the weekends free, because generally you work hard for 5 days, and 2 days it's primarily for you to take rest, spend time with your family. It's a good practice.
Yeah, that's true.
But then, yeah.
I see another question. How important do you think the starting job is? I think it depends on what your priorities are. I wanted to really be sure that I start in the right place and in the right profile. But of course, you also then need to know if you don't have an answer for that, like if you don't really have a preference or a strong preference, I think any experience is a good experience, I would say in that way. So I think the mistake I did was that I probably was without that experience for some time. And I think I could have been in a better place if I would have already started working somewhere, doesn't matter where. So yeah, it is important, but then not at the cost of losing a lot of time and really losing a lot of experience which you could have built in the meantime. So that's Nirmal. I don't know if that does that answer your question, Nirmal?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Arman, can you explain more about design user-friendly? Can you explain more about design user-friendly? Oh, did you get that from my the introduction or the bio which was on the poster? Is Arman on call? Okay. Yeah, so this was actually the part of the whole stakeholder management. So if you go, I'm just giving you a random number. If you go in a big organization, there will be say one designer for 100 to 100 or maybe even more employees. So you won't really have that many people who will understand design. And I think it's our job as designers, because again, as I said, we can't be in our bubble of saying that, okay, we are the ones who design and all of you just listen to us. So it also needs to be the way you communicate, the way you explain them, the way you remove your jargons and say how easy you can make design for others to understand. So that's basically what I meant by making design user friendly. So it's something which going forward becomes really important. Otherwise you have these barriers between, and then it becomes really difficult for you as a designer to stay in an organization. Next, Shravan Tiwari, starting your work on personal projects. Can you please elaborate and give more guidance on what type of this? Yeah, I mean, this is amazing. So again, as I said, you're living in a very strange times, right? And when I say personal projects, just think of things you can do. I mean, I give an example. So I had this girl, and she was building a portfolio here, and I gave her an assignment that, okay, you have COVID going on, and what can you do, for example, on Google Maps to make life easy for people who are looking for things. So for example, there was a lockdown here and people were not really aware of what's shut, what's open, where should I go, where should I not go, and things like that. And that was just a small project which we picked up, and she just came up with some nice interesting ideas which how we can improve Google Maps for COVID. And that's 5-day or maybe 4-day work, but it comes out as a really interesting idea. And I was reading yesterday that Google has actually started this feature of pointing out areas in the map which have high COVID probability and things like that. So just keep yourself engaged, just keep your ears and eyes open, and just keep sketching or keep whatever tool you use. Just
let me also add a few things to this. When we talk about any creative stream, for that matter, I mean, design is one thing, be it just painting or be it music or any such it is you time for somebody to tell you to do something. In coursework you will be given certain assignments. I understand that when you get an assignment, you'll have to definitely spend some time and do that assignment to meet the given task. If you are a singer or a musician, what is expected from you? You have to practice, right? You have to do riyaz. If you are a painter, you need to practice sketching very regularly. You have to draw, you have to paint. You cannot just keep waiting for somebody to assign you a task and then you go out and do it. See, when we say personal projects, this is also about observing spaces around you, trying to look at the problems around you and pick up things from there. It need not solve all the problems of the world, but small little problems in the world can be solved with that, right?
Yeah.
So that's how it should be. Mrityunjay, so far we have just been kind of as part of this course because these sessions were so engaging that I thought try to also summarize whatever we have listened to from Pragam, Ade, Siddharth, and others, and also assign the students some tasks.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that will be useful because so far they have the kind of courses they're doing right now. I'm sure they are getting assignments there, but I think I also need to give them some assignments now, which you may or may not consider as part of the course. It would be more personal in nature. So let's work out something next week.
I had a question, Pragam. Like when I was interning with Samsung, with you, of course. So there was a problem which the product design team came up with. where when they were designing a washing machines for some users, in their user research, they found that user expected more functionalities in their washing machines, while those many buttons were causing usability issues with the users. So what do you think, how should we solve these kind of paradoxes or contradictions when you're designing something or some product?
So I think if any research is coming out with this outcome of saying that user wants these features, we probably did something wrong there. User always want more features. User always hate what they see, or user always love what they see, and they will never ask for change. So for me, I think it's probably the worst outcome. I mean, I'm not again criticizing the work which was done, but it is something I learned, and even now it's very common. You go to users and you ask, hey, do you like this? Do you want this? If I come and ask you, I want this feature in Zoom, who would say no? Yeah, that's nice. Give me, yes. So no one really says no to a new feature, and that's our job as designers to understand really, do they really need it? How they were doing right now? So basically, I think research is about observation and not really. And that's, I think, what Steve Jobs also said, right? If you go and ask, I mean, and that's, I misunderstood as a student because I thought, hey, he's hating research. He's a stupid guy. He doesn't know how research works. But now I think he was right. And he was not really saying, don't go and ask customers, don't do research, but he was telling, don't go and ask them what you want, or do you like a horse, or do you like a car, or do you like an iPhone? I mean, if you go and ask somebody at that time, you like iPhone, they would have closed the project back then, right? So I think it's just a way you do research and how you see it. So
yeah.
Maybe last question, and then maybe we can. So Kedar is asking, what difference did you notice in work cultures of the 3 places you worked in? Yeah, I think it's a really interesting one. So if you talk about India, if you talk about Korea and here in Netherlands, I think I would probably say Korea and India were a bit more close. It's also, I mean, the workplace is also governed a lot with the local culture, and then, for example, the kind of hierarchies we have in Korea, more or less also in India, but I think it's changing now. But here, for example, I can just I call the CEO of ING with his name, with the first name. No one really. So yeah, so I mean, these are the different kind of things, right? So everyone is open. Someone can really critique me on my face, on my design work, and which sometimes comes to you as a shock that, hey, he's so rude. He's just calling my design crap or bullshit or whatever. And then, but this is the way they are. And then after a point, you realize. So yeah, so there were these subtle differences. For example, in Korea, you don't really get any feedback. So you will go and present in a meeting with your seniors, and they will just look at you with blank faces, and then meeting is over. And then like, okay, what happens? Did they say yes? Did they say no? Did they like it? Did they not like it? And again, when you realize it's the way the local culture is, and then you kind of adapt to it. But I can I can go on and on what were the differences, but basically it was the way you, at least for design, it was the way you receive and give feedback. That was probably one of the biggest differences. Anything else? Anyone? Or maybe it's already too late.
Right. So thank you, Pragam, again.
Thank you, sir. It was it was also good for me. I did actually kind of collated all my